Where did you go? Thank you. Thank you. I don't have that. Okay, so we're getting ready to start our Board of Finance meeting, and just an annual meeting that we have to have. And currently, I am the president, Holly Schoen, and the secretary is Amy Cotkamp, and we have to, oh, sorry, I'm moving ahead. We are just going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Since we're following another meeting, we do not have to read the Pledge of Allegiance, or do we? Okay, all right. And we have our same quorum as our regular board meeting meeting that we just had. So we have Amy Cotkamp, Holly Schoen, Chris Dalton, and Scott Robertson present. And have nothing to add to the agenda. So if I can get a motion for approving the agenda as is.
I make a motion to approve the Board of Finance agenda as stated.
I'll second.
Okay. And all those in favor for approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. All right, so now we do have to re-elect officers for the 2026 year. Anybody wants to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to keep the slate of officers the same for the Finance Committee.
I'll second.
I'm fine with that. All right. All right, so any other discussion? All right, all those in favor for continuing with the current Board of Officers for the Finance Board, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And so for our routine matters, we have A1, and Tracy is going to give us a little breakdown here. She's given us some packets.
Yeah, so the first item is to review our investments that we made in the calendar year 2025. So from your packet, a summary of our CDs that we have with Farmers and Merchants Bank, which we made $414,056 in 25 on interest for the CDs. In our sweep account, which is our main checking account that we have at Farmers and Merchants Bank, the interest we made on that was $190,720. And then we do have the money that's at the Hoosier Fund at the state that we have investments in. And we made $300,257 there. So we made just under or just over $900,000 for the year, which is pretty good. And if you remember, like if just in comparison in 2022, we had made $138,000. So we're doing well with that. And we do have $6 million, we put $6 million at Hoosier Fund, so that's what's there making interest for us there. And then we have $8 million in CDs at Farmers and Merchants Bank. Dr. Zupin and I did meet with the bank president a couple weeks ago, or right before break. Right?
Yeah, right before break.
And we kind of discussed our investments, because kind of how things have happened over the last few years. As you can see on this, almost all of them but one are coming due on the same date. And before we had them staggered so that they were coming due every 6 months, a couple of them. So he's going to work on doing something like that for us again. Because just how all of the, we set this up several years ago with the CDs, and in that time period, the bank wasn't maybe wanting to do 24s, or, it wasn't in our best interest to do 24 months and stuff like that. So that's how the staggering kind of went away. So he's going to look at something like that to see if we can kind of get them more staggered again. We used to have a couple coming due every April and every October. So basically every 6 months we'd have like a couple coming due instead of all of them at once. So once they kind of come back with that, we'll bring that to you guys.
So since the Hoosier Fund seems to be doing so well, would we want to move more? Can we move more over there? Is that an option?
We did, and we had some, and then the bank called us and asked if we would move some back and gave us a higher interest rate, gave us what we were making at Hoosier Fund. So
Okay.
we went ahead and moved that back. They also asked us to, we were going to move some more in the fall. And they, I notified them and told them that we were gonna be, moving that. And then they came back and asked if we would only move half of what we were planning on doing. And they gave us, they matched what Hoosier Fund and gave us a CD. And actually that's worked out in our favor because Hoosier Fund rate has dropped and that CD has stayed, the 4.25.
Okay.
So.
Next time ask them for a little extra.
It's nice to.
Leverage it, but I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's great. No,
Are
Thank
those
you.
fixed rates or like
For-
annually, do they change or?
if they're 24 months,
If
they're
they're
fixed for 2
For
years.
they're fixed
Okay.
for 2 years,
Yeah.
right?
Hey, sorry, I'm
Well,
not very.
that's all right.
On that spot. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this rate that farmers and merchants gives, is that a public rate or is that a special rate for us?
I would assume it's a special rate for us, but I can't speak on that. I'm not positive.
Cause I've seen local banks do this. Okay,
So,
Well, when you got that much money.
right.
yeah, I understand, that's a big deciding factor.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's it on our investments, if, no one has
Okay.
any questions.
Mhm.
Then we also need to review our investment policy. Dr. Zupan and I are not making any recommendations to change anything to the policy, so unless, one of you would like to see something changed.
And
on it.
Neola hasn't recommended anything
Yeah,
either,
no.
so.
Yeah, so nothing's came down from the state or Neola or anything with any changes, so. It's basically, just highlight that we can't exceed 2 years in CDs.
You can't exceed 2 years,
correct.
right?
And, it's just the basic policy of how we're supposed to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I
if
don't-
there's. And so then we're down to the review of our financial condition of the corporation. So I have, a little bit to talk about and then, Dr. Zupan has her DUAB report to go over also. So first thing I just wanted to, point out is the rain day summary. I usually give you guys that at the end of the year, each year. So, and it's from conception, so you can see where the money's been used, over the years on the different things. We currently, in the last several years, is all we use it on is for teacher professional development. And so, again, that's what we used it for in 2025. So that basically pays for substitutes and conference fees, if there is conference fees for some of the teachers and stuff that attend those. So we spent $31,146 and 25 from the Rainy Danny Fund for those professional development things. Nobody has any questions on that?
That's the fund that once it's gone, right?
I mean, you
Or-
can replenish it, but you can move money from your education and your operations fund into it, but
Okay.
really now, back when it was started, you couldn't move funds, you couldn't move money between funds. The only way, if you had extra money in, like back then, it was capital projects, transportation, bus replacement. If you had extra money in those funds and wanted to use it for the general fund, which was basically, our current education fund, you couldn't move it from that fund over. The only way to get it there to help was to move it to rainy day fund, and then you could use it for
And
the
that
others.
took a resolution and.
Right, it takes resolutions and transfers. We haven't transferred any money in there since 2012. And now that you can move money back and forth, unless you're just wanting to put it there. If you're really wanting to use it for the education fund, we'll just move it to the education fund,
Yeah.
So,
And that's kind of what it's being used for.
right,
technically.
it's currently just being used, for education fund expenses.
And that number in 25 is higher than 24 and 23, but remember, we have all new curriculum, and so that took some training that you
Yeah.
supported with the PD.
Like that's
That
all that training.
CKLA and
Yes,
the-
yes.
and
All
that
that
conscious
training we did in the
discipline.
summer, last
The
summer.
conscious discipline is a grant,
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good to know.
but yeah, the
that's right.
math and that
Cause we had
CKLA.
several in the summertime last year,
Yeah.
I remember teachers attended.
And, this is a fund, so it doesn't have any interest or.
Well, so It's all invested, you know, so like all of this right
It's
here
part of,
is part of it.
okay, that helps
But-
kind of clear.
But we do not deposit any interest to this. We give the interest to the education fund, the operations fund, the severance fund, which is the fund that, when we did the, help me Scott, when we had to do those, pension bond.
Pension bond.
When we did the pension bond, we had to set up the severance bond, as part of that, and that is to pay for the teachers' sick days when they retire. And so we do and use that money, invest it, and put whatever it's supposed to get, its share of the interest into that to keep that fund going.
Yeah.
So we put it in, the education operations, that fund, and then the cafeteria, you have to give the cafeteria, it's federal fund, so it has to have whatever it earns.
So down here at the bottom, this is our total, current total.
Yeah, that's the current balance, as of December 31st.
Wait, the one, okay, wait, so the far right one?
Right here.
The cash, fund cash balance.
Okay, all right, yeah, wasn't sure if that was.
And then up here is just a history of how it got.
Correct, of where it came from. You know, those are the funds that it came from. So the majority of it came from the moving the cash balance out of the debt service until the state stopped.
So,
So that's that. And then the other packet is, it's basically your normal, monthly reports, but, just kind of wanted to go through the actual review of it and talk about some of the things, of how the full calendar year, the year-to-date review. Our interest, on investments increased by $105,000 over 2024. So when I'm talking about as it being increased, it's being compared to calendar year 24 and calendar year 25. The other revenue, when you look at your reports, it's increased from the previous years because of, this is the first year that we got a full year of the Little Prairie Preschool. Because remember, we took over that preschool in the fall of 24 and started receiving that tuition. And so then now in 25, that was a full year of receiving that. So that's why you see that big jump on your report, that it's higher than the previous year. And then our state revenue, go ahead.
when you say the tuition for this, is that from the state or is that from?
No, we don't get
Parents.
anything from the state, that's from the parents.
Okay,
Because remember, they used to be fully self-funded
right.
and they took care of everything. And then, you know, it's that, when we met, like Bree was doing a lot. Outside of, you know, work, taking care of, you know, collecting the money and everything. Like, she had a board, but they weren't really a working board. They didn't help with the stuff. So in the end, we all decided that we would take that program over. And so now she's paid out of she was always paid out of the tuition, and the tuition goes in there. And actually, we're getting ready to look at that. I told Corey once I got done with all the year-end stuff that we would look at it because we'll have a full year of getting the tuition and the expenses and see if we need to raise the tuition because they're getting ready to update their handbook and everything and send out to the parents. So they want to know if we want to. So that we may be bringing that to you guys about raising the tuition in the next month or two, but I want to take a look at it and
For
analyze
next
it.
year,
Yeah, for this fall.
fall 26.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they do, can you have them give us like, when's the last time we raised it? So I
Yeah,
used
Bree
to-
has all of
Yeah, so like, but like just share it with us, so if
Yeah.
we're making a,
Little
You know,
history.
yeah, if we're making a decision, it kind of helps us.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so that's where why the other revenue is, increased over 24. Then if you look at your state revenue, you know, it pretty much is the same as, it's slightly decreased from 2024, and that's due to the declining enrollment. You know, the state increased the per student funding from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25 by about $1,000 per student. But, you know, our students went down, so we didn't get that. They also increased the basic grant. They added that money for the curriculum materials. But even though we have all that more expense, we have less money from the state because of our we've lost the students. And we've actually, so basically we received $31,253 less in calendar year 25 than we did in calendar year 24 from the basic grant from the state, even though they increased the funding to it,
Because
because of our enrollment.
When you say they increased the funding, you said it's about 1,000, but this shows only about 100.
Oh, yeah, I guess, sorry.
So, I mean, that's barely
That's-
anything. Is that really
That
1,000
might
or
be a
100?
typo.
Okay.
Because I think it was 1,000
In your,
in my head when I was typing
I
this
didn't
up.
think it was that much. I didn't think they
I didn't
increased
either.
it that much.
Or maybe it is, maybe
I thought it
that
was
is.
peanuts.
Yeah, I don't think. it
Maybe
was-
that is right, then maybe it is a typo, but I don't know why I had in my head 1,000.
You wished.
Yeah, I guess probably.
That's what it needed to be. It was.
Yeah, I'll have to
Okay.
double check
Yeah,
that,
but I
you're
do
probably
think-
right.
Yeah.
But in theory, the tuition support increased, and we'll find out from what amount, but our
Yeah.
enrollment declined.
Right.
Okay.
And so since 2021 school year, we've decreased by 164 students. And I gave you like a summary of our
Go up.
enrollment. And you can see what it is at each of the schools and how much it went down each year. In 23-24, we went up 11 kids, but then went back down 25. So over that 6-year period, we've decreased 164 students overall.
I think when Brock was here in his presentation showed us though that the number of school eligible kids is decreasing
Oh, yeah,
in the area.
100%, yes.
So it's yeah,
It's not because, I'm not,
not all of it.
I'm not indicating that these students are going somewhere else and not, we just don't have the students.
Yeah.
We don't have the kids in the county.
I mean, there are some that go in or out or whatever,
Right,
but
but
yeah.
that's not the problem. The problem is the population. We have an older population and not, younger kids. And then we did you saw in the vouchers that you just approved or whatever at the regular meeting that we transferred their 2.1 million from the referendum form to the education fund to support the programs. So that's kind of just an overview of, some key points for the revenue for 2025. Does anybody got any questions? And then I'll move to the expenses if we're all good with that. So then to review the expenses, the increase from 24 to 25 is basically in salaries and benefits. It went up almost $900,000. And, that's from our raises that we gave this staff. You can see the average raise for 24-25 was 3.85% and 25-26 was 5%. And that included the raise to the base and the increment, those averages. We also increased the insurance, or we had insurance premium increases. They weren't large, like this last year was only 2%, but we also increased how much we were paying, for the single and the family plans. So, and we really only saw that effect for 3 months. We'll see that full effect in 26. The biggest thing in, actually what we spent in other supplies and stuff really kind of went down because the purchase services and supplies increased by $706,000 compared to 24, but $743,861 of that was for curriculum materials. That used to come out of its own fund that the state now moved into the education fund and added funding to the state grant that we got less in to pay for that.
And really those curriculum materials, the majority of probably that amount is like over a 6-year contract, not contract, but isn't it like
No,
the curriculum programming, isn't it like?
no, you have to pay that up front. Like that was how the parents were.
The parents would
charged.
pay us.
But no, I mean, so we paid up front, but like we won't probably be doing that again for another 6 years.
Right, but aren't we going to do social studies or science this year?
Okay.
Sometimes there are other,
Yeah,
now, I will say that your math and your language arts, I will call those series, where they have lots of materials.
Yeah.
So those are usually our most expensive.
So yeah, so hopefully we won't have that kind of charge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It'll really, it just depends on what you're adopting.
Yeah.
But also, you have to remember that it's not just the textbooks, it's all of those consumables also that the parents used to be charged for and paying for. So all of those workbooks, all of the stuff that, you know, there was always like a fee for different classes out of BC when they had to buy food and all that. We are supporting that now.
Yeah.
So
And that's because the state's requiring.
correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't charge
You cannot charge.
additional for
The
that.
only thing we can charge for is PE
Uniforms,
uniforms.
yeah. I was thinking that changed, but no, I guess it wasn't.
Well, one
Or-
year they said
said
no,
no,
and then
and
they
then
went back and said
Yeah, I
yes.
do remember
But I
that.
think it's only for 7th and 8th grade.
Because I think that's they only require in seventh and
Yeah,
eighth grade.
yeah.
After that, they don't require the uniforms. So that's the biggest, you know, obviously the education fund is mainly salaries and benefits for our staff. But the purchase services went up so much because of the curriculum materials.
And that was mainly the CKLA.
For this year, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the whole reading series, yeah.
And then when you just like kind of summarize it with the cash balance to see where the cash balance is, you can see we were at 5.8 million, January 1st. The year-to-date revenue was 15.1. The year-to-date expenses was 16.3. So we actually overspent what we brought in, $1.1 million. And then we transferred the referendum funding over. And so we ended up with $6.8 million balance on December 31st for 25 in the education fund.
So just kind of thinking referendum, like that's probably a pattern that's gonna just keep continuing.
I would
The
assume.
being almost $1 million overspending because of the state.
Right,
really
we're
not-
actually kind of back to where we were, because, you know, it kind of changed
Yeah.
because of all the money that we got from ESSER
Yeah,
and that stuff, we were getting funding, and so we really weren't overspending what we
Yeah.
had projected.
yes.
You know, at the beginning, like in the first 8 years, that's why the referendum
Yeah.
balances has, in that fund, we haven't had to use as much. But now we're going back,
Yes, that's
now that all that ESSER money and all of that stuff is finally gone, and we're starting to
See the
see
use.
that, yeah,
That's what, I mean, that's
back to where it was
definitely a
at.
bigger number. than what we've been
So
seeing.
it does show that we're using the referendum dollars for the programs.
Yeah.
And it should show that we need it to continue with our good programs. And that's easily seen now because the ESSER's money and all of that is not in play. So we're getting a taste of what we're using that referendum money
Yeah.
for.
And that, yeah, if
And
you're
if we
looking
don't
at
have it-
salaries and benefits, I mean, that's getting rid of people and programs, you know,
Yeah.
Right.
that's, you know, down the road, I mean, not.
And
right
those
now,
salaries
but-
and benefits that we did provide them, that's a competitive, we have a competitive wage, and so we can hopefully attract, and that's,
Retain.
that's-
And retain, yeah,
Right,
retain.
and that's what's important too. And so the referendum dollars are being used for good things.
Yeah.
Plus $743,000 isn't, a small amount to spend on curriculum, and that's been
Students.
tested and shows results for, the people that have been using that, their schools that have that curriculum series have shown good results. I think it's, even, we've seen some examples where they've shown what they were teaching and that the students are seeing good results. So hopefully that
Should pay off.
should show up in our testing.
Yeah,
In our-
yeah, for sure. So then on to the operations fund. Our property tax revenue was up, about 530,000 from calendar year 24. That's due to an increase in AV, so our AV went up, basically $180 million. But our actual tax rate for calendar year 25 was 3 cents less than it was in 24. So, we did receive more funding because of the increased AV, but we didn't have to raise our tax rate. We were able to actually lower the tax rate in 25 compared to 24 because of the increase in AV.
And we have no control on the assessed value is.
Right, we don't have any control
is
over this.
Nothing that we can do.
Yeah. And then just wanted to note that that other revenue, if you look on your reports and the bar charts and stuff, you'll see that in the other revenue for operations fund, it looks like that it was increased quite a bit from 24. But basically $415,000 of that was a reimbursement from Bank of New York because, you know, before the bond sold, we had to pay the expenses for the projects out of the operations fund. And then we submitted that once the bond sold and was reimbursed. So you'll see the increase of the expenses on the expense side, but also the revenue side, you know, so it washed.
In and out.
Yeah. And then with the expenses, obviously, you know, actually the operations salary and benefits didn't increase that much, around $10,000, but there's not a lot, you know, that doesn't have. The majority of our employees are paid out of the education fund, you know, so the operations fund is just your custodials, this office staff, the custodians, and the bus drivers. And obviously we have a lot of open bus driving positions, so we aren't paying what we normally would have been paying for salaries and benefits for those positions because they're open. I mean, we did decrease the secretary here at the corporation office, so we didn't have that expense in 25. And then
On the salary, sorry, I don't mean
Go
to
ahead.
stop your thought. The salary benefits, I know like the admin office, but what about administration at our schools? Is that education?
correct.
Okay, all right, I just had, I thought so, but then I
And
remember,
it's kind of been all over the
yeah,
board.
yeah, okay. Just,
I think at one point they were thinking that they were gonna put the principals in the operations, but they did not do that.
okay,
So.
Okay.
And then so the purchase services and supplies increased by $1.8 million, which, you know, that was by design because we had been saving, you know, money in the cash balance to pay for projects. So that increase included the payments for the track, which the track, ended up, you know, it was like 1.9 million, but we used some of that bond for it. So that if you're looking at that number and saying, well, I don't think that's right, that's because part of it was out of the bond and part of it was out of operations. And then that 415,000 I just talked about, those expenses are in there. And then some of our projects that we had been accumulating money to do was those carpet projects at all the schools was 300. And then we had our yearly maintenance projects like the asphalt, the miscellaneous painting, etc. But the bulk of, you know, that increased 1.8 million is those projects. And then if you look at the cash balance, the review, the year-to-date revenue was at 8.9 million. The year-to-date expenses was 11.3. Obviously, we overspent that, but that was by design. We had been accumulating that cash in the cash balance to pay for these future projects. So our current cash balance is $2.6 million, and it's still a 20 plus cash balance if you look at it based on our fixed costs in the operations fund. So even, you know, I know it did decrease quite a bit, but we wanted it to decrease because we had been, you know, saving that money for that. So we're still have a very healthy cash balance in the operations fund with the 2.6 at this point.
but it is recommended that we have.
Correct.
Like
You were
15,
recommended to
20.
have at least 20. I mean, now they're even saying
20%.
20 to 25.
Okay. So that's.
Yeah, so
That
we're
would be
right
much
in
less.
where the state and everybody is recommending, so. Now, before we were well above that
Yeah,
because
but
we
by
had that
design.
money in there for future projects.
Yeah.
But now we're pretty much where they're recommending. And then the debt referendum and rainy day funds, we already talked about the rainy day fund and its balance. The referendum, you know, is used to support the educational programs. And the current balance in that is 11.9 at the end of 2025. And then, you know, again, all the other funds on that fund to bank report, if you see some that are in the negative, that's because they're reimbursable funds. We have to spend the money and then we send for reimbursement the following month, and then the state reimburses us on the 15th and 31st, depending on when you submit the claim. And then I did want to point out, just so that, you know, if you're wondering about the balances at Huger Fund, in this bank to fund report, on the very last page, it has like the bank names and the balances in each of those. And you can see that the CDs, you know, for the farmers and merchants is on its own line. So if you're ever wondering how many, you know, how much money we have in CDs at the farmers and merchants, you can see that. So at the Huger Fund, you can see it has a little over $7 million balance, and we have 6 million there. So it's, you know, over the years has accumulated over $1 million in interest.
As far as the referendum goes, I know it's 2028, but is that like through 2028 or up to 2028?
Through, so our last draw will be December of 2028. So if you wanted to continue it, you would have to have it on the ballot in November of 2028. And that's all I have, unless anyone has any questions. Dr. Zubin can go through hers.
Yeah, mine won't take long because Tracy's talked about it, so I'm probably just gonna summarize. The first part, it's the, starts with the ADM enrollment. Tracy has talked about the declining enrollment. Truly, a lot of external factors, that would be our population. As you said, Rob talked about that. And also just wanna just remind everybody that the options for students today, when you can go virtually, there are some people choosing that. We do monitor if we lose students to other schools, but I can tell you that's not typically what happens. It's mobility, families moving, it is choosing virtual or in the population. So, but we'll continue to look at that and understand that. Next, you'll see the fund balances, and this is just what Tracy had emphasized just a few minutes ago. You will see that for 2024, that the operations funds dropped lower than maybe other patterns. And again, that was by design. We knew what we wanted to spend that money on, and we did that. So that's that chart. The next one, fund balances as percent of expenditures. So if you look there in 2024, it says 56.1%. And what that means is that we could continue operating for 56.1% of the school year with a stop delay revenue. And that's still pretty healthy. Let's see, the next one is the deficit surplus. And we're just looking to make sure that revenue exceeding expenses is the goal. We have that. We did talk about how the referendum dollars help with that. Just emphasizing the importance of that fund. And then the last page just shows our different funds, and the main ones are the federal and the state revenue, the operating and the local. Nothing has changed over the years. It basically looks the same. So the only thing I want to summarize here is that with Senate Bill 1, which is the bill that passed regarding the property taxes, the financial impact on Benton Community Schools will be delayed to some extent. We've talked about that because of the benefit of our referendum. So other schools right now, you will be hearing, unfortunately, some are already contemplating or planning on riffing teachers and programs because of this Senate Bill 1. And I'm not going to say that we're immune to that. I'm just saying it's delayed because we do have referendum dollars. Other schools who have referendums are probably in the same boat as we are. So we're going to remain vigilant on our funds and plan accordingly, but we have a little bit of time to plan and feel bad for the other schools that don't. But it will affect us. That bill will affect us. It's just kind of a delayed response for us.
And Brock kind of highlighted that as well when he showed the decrease of the different groups, whether it be the business owners, the
Mhm.
acreage,
Yeah,
percentages changing and
Yeah.
all that.
everybody will be affected.
Yep.
Yes, unless something changes. So,
Well, the way they go.
Are you able to give an easy explanation of Senate Bill 1, or?
that was, they changed, they were really giving property tax breaks.
Okay.
And so that affects the
Yeah.
county and us, we won't see the same amount of revenue. That's basically it in a nutshell.
And it's, yeah, and it's
And
the,
it's
it's the
over the whole
majority of,
county.
it's the majority of our, it's a higher, our higher contributors are
Yeah.
benefiting from that.
Yeah.
So the county government, they will receive less. I mean, it's just, it's great for your land, your homeowners and, it just, it's gonna hurt us. And it's tiered, for 3 years, the effect of it in the
Yeah, I
in the
remember
amount
that
is
presentation,
changed.
but I. like,
So
just
when
needed-
Brock was doing his, he was trying to project out to what it would, the third year, what that would mean.
Yeah.
It seems like they've increased the valuation of everything so much
I
that
know.
sometimes you're not seeing a decrease in your rate.
Mhm.
Because even though the
Right.
tax rate might, like you just said on some of our paperwork, the tax rate is lower, but the valuation is sky high, so you're still going up.
Yeah, which is,
But I still wanna go back to what Brock shared with us. Our tax rate is still below the state average for schools with the referendum.
I think that's huge.
It is. And it makes me wonder, without the referendum, we'd be close to someplace in the 50 cent. How do you run a school? And I think that's why, I wasn't here, but that's why back in 2020, we had to do something. So even with the referendum, we're below the state average. So that's why I want to make sure that people understand what we're using the referendum dollars for, and I
Yeah.
think that's where Delaware can help us.
yeah, I agree. I think it's good to have that, just out there and communicating, because it is a question that a lot of people in
Their
the
money.
community have, yeah, and it's good to put that out there.
Yeah.
Was it West Lafayette that I had sent you something about that they were exploring a referendum or transferring in students?
They've always had a
I
referendum.
was gonna say, they
Yes.
always. have.
Okay.
But they were
like the
considering
first
transfer
people.
students.
Yeah, they were considering
Yeah.
transfer, I guess.
Right.
Oh, yeah, because they've never allowed.
Right.
The only way you could go there is if you were a staff member.
Yeah.
And if you could bring your kids
Or a
there.
volunteer.
Why, you know somebody like
Uh-huh.
that?
So that's all I have. Do you guys have anything?
Lots of good information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, are we at the turn?
We are adjourned. Let's go ahead and do that. 7:40.
7:40, what we got?